Recording in 3, 2, and 1. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL, and now we'll include the World Cup, but only for this last episode because of what happened. From a bench perspective, I'm your host Ben, and I'm just going to start it off saying I think this final was a pretty nice early present, opened up from under the tree. But to touch on something I said last week, I kind of fell into the trap I usually hate doing, which was I was almost discounting what Maradona did, and I frankly, I've long said that it's dumb to kind of compare people of different eras to another. It's a different gameplay, different rules, different medicine, physios available. I think they even said during the game that Maradona was experiencing like different challenges or tackles. So I think that's fair. That can explain a little some of the discrepancies and like the stat differences. But another thing too is I'm thinking like the NBA has a bit of a like Mount Rushmore kind of thing, like for their quote unquote greats. Now you don't have to Americanize it, but I think soccer can maybe adopt something similar. You have like a Pele, a Maradona, and I think next to those two will be him. Because
Mbappe, yeah.
I do think he is. You probably will have to make room for him when this is all said and done. But for
Yeah.
right now, he belongs with those two, and I think he is the person of this era. I don't think there's anyone like him that I've seen. I can't remember anyone that's also more deserving to win that trophy than him. And it was the only thing that was remaining, and he's got it. So yeah, I mean, to touch on another thing, I think the game has gotten a tendency to become a little too robotic, and I've mentioned that too. I think it can be sometimes that can be academy driven, but Messi is just unique in a way that I just can't remember. He never cowered in being inventive or creative and taking players on, getting the ball to teammates, being creative, and to be able to do it for such a sustained period of time, not really have to deal with injuries that much. And when he lost his pace, he was able to adapt his game, and he did this playing both in the league every single week and in Champions League, which a lot of people before didn't have to really do. So I think we'll just start off kind of just talking about that. Oh, and that said, I'm pleased to be joined by my co-host Rex. So Rex, good to see you.
Hey, good to be back, man. What a final! It was an amazing game.
And we're definitely going to talk about that. And always, we're also joined by I'll say fellow squad member in Jeremy. Good to see you as well.
Hey, thanks for having me here. Excited to talk about the game.
Yeah, didn't want to go in like a too big of a spiel, but I wanted to kind of get that out there because I don't think
I loved it.
I was probably going to forget. But we'll just get started with like the story of the week. I'm gonna go with maybe a different idea where I think it's been just the entire tournament has been a World Cup of redemption and basically bounce backs. And Gvardiol was another example that we saw in the third place game. But I think the theme really showed up in the final as well, so I thought that was fitting. Montreal is basically the player responsible for the tying PK. Now, I know Jeremy's going to disagree with that, and we'll get to that later. But he's also the guy that basically clinches it with his final kick in the shootout. So I thought that was fitting, and also, I mean, to be honest, that was basically Argentina's theme throughout this entire tournament. Just redemption and bouncing back. Maybe people were about to count them out. Started early with Saudi Arabia, with the Saudi Arabia result, and it showed up in the Netherlands second half, and this game as well. And so, yeah, it's just kind of fitting that all that kind of worked out. So, oh, and what do you guys got?
Rex, I'll let you go first.
Well, I think for me, it was kind of the final of the stars, so to say. Mbappe and Messi both kind of put the team on their backs during various points of the game. Mbappe scored a hat trick, obviously, and he got his PK. He made his PK in the PKs, and then Messi scored twice and then made his PK as well. So it was great to see like the stars firing and really rising to the occasion. It didn't seem like they were nervous or scared. They didn't shrink. It was kind of like they thrived off of how important this game was, and they really both at times put the teams on their backs. And as much as I am happy for Messi, I'm a little sad for Mbappe just because he did everything he could out there. I'm not that sad for him, obviously, but because he already has one. But he did everything he could. He got the team back in it. It was a brilliant performance. And yeah, Ben and Jeremy, I heard you say this too. I've been talking about the Mount Rushmore. I think Messi is that third face on there, but in 3.5 years, it could be Mbappe coming up there because he's got a boatload of goals and he's still young. So I don't know, Ben. That's a good. I think Pele and Maradona definitely on it, and then Messi joins. I think now, and then I don't know. We got one more space, right? So maybe Mbappe in a few years. But yeah, it was definitely a final for the stars. It was awesome to see.
Rex, do you make room for Ronaldo right
Yeah,
now, though? Or one of the Ronaldos?
Euros for
yeah,
for
that's true.
Ronaldo. But
Or
you have to win the World Cup to get on there.
There we go.
Cristiano
that,
household.
that all it takes is that Morani chance and Emi Martinez save to change the discussion. Jeremy, what do
True.
you got?
Yeah, I guess that's a great what Rex just brought up. I'll circle back to that. Even though it was definitely a final of the stars, I think Argentina won this World Cup because collectively they were better than any other team. And I think that I went back and looked at some of the Messi's highlights the other day from the 2014 World Cup, and one of the things that just stood out to me was one. I don't think some of his performances were even that great. And the other thing is that it just was a really, really broken team. It wasn't any better than it was in 2010, I'd argue, and even in 2018, they weren't quite a team yet. But this was like this team worked their asses off for Lionel Messi, and obviously like they could do that, and because they knew he was so great, and that like he would be able to deliver on these really high moments. But I was stunned watching the celebrations and just seeing how much Messi was beaming ear to ear. He wasn't crying. I don't know if you guys picked that up, but I thought it was strange. I was expecting just a flood of tears, after these losses he's had before, and you see Scaloni and you see DePaul, all of them in tears, and Messi just got the biggest grin I've ever seen in my life. And I think it's because I'm sort of going another direction, but I think it's because I think it's also because this is like finally the thing off his back. I mean, this was the title that he was probably had thought he would never win. His moment had already passed in that 2014 title, and that he would forever be in the shadow of Maradona. And here you saw a man just completely unburdened by that shadow. And I think it was impressive just how well throughout this tournament he's held himself together, his calmness, his demeanor, and like I said, how much that squad realized. If you 5 minutes after the game, they're being interviewed and they're really talking about it. They're talking about it personally because every player wants to win the World Cup, but they're really talking about it as like we did this for Messi. And I thought that was just so impressive how they really pushed their own personal ambitions a little bit under for somebody else's ambitions, and I just thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean to kind of stick a little bit on I guess both what both of you said. With with Messi, it's interesting because I know Jeremy, you've already said that at least in the beginning, he was always he was basically kind of more on the shy type, not really that outspoken. And I remember before the Copa, Rodrigo de Paul basically said Messi came out and gave basically the best speech I've ever heard in the dressing room to kind of fire us up for the second half. So it just felt like it seems like maybe he's kind of as he's aged, he's kind of taken on that leadership role. I mean, he was captain. Um, but another thing I'm trying to think of is even when Mbappe scored that insane goal to get it 2-2, the camera was on Messi and he was smiling. It didn't necessarily phase him, and maybe the whole team kind of took after that. I mean, the thing that's really wild is I don't really get how they were able to do this, and I've rewatched the game a couple of times. Is how they were able to just completely wipe out what happened in that second half. They did this with the Netherlands too, and they dominated really in extra time. We were texting. We thought the only way that they can win this is basically it goes to PKs, and that's basically what happens. But they were the dominant team in extra time as well. They were just able to regroup, and that was just really surprising. And it was just it was kind of the story their entire tournament to be able to finally fix what was broken. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I want to jump on it. I do think they were the dominant team in extra time, but you really look at the chances. And maybe the best chance of that extra time period actually falls to France. Maybe even that Mbappe chance where he basically scrambles across the whole box and can't get a shot off. So they were able to put that pressure that was put on them by relinquishing that 2-goal lead, which should have just been. I think it would have killed anybody. I think we all expected them just to fold, like you said. But I do think that's what made the game so wild, was that Argentina had reestablished themselves a little bit of extra time to create chances that they weren't doing the final 30 minutes, but France were still just as dangerous on the break.
Yeah, I mean, another thing too is like what other people didn't have to necessarily face before this is and twice it nearly came back to haunt Argentina, but the 5 subs I think really did change this entire tournament, and I think we really saw that in an extra time. I think we really in this case I think we really saw it in the knockout rounds, both with the Netherlands. Basically, Van Hal completely changed his formation, and you saw Deschamps basically do kind of the same thing. He was almost able to like sub up an entire different team, and
Yeah.
that completely changed it in a way that in the past other teams wouldn't have had to face that. So that's another thing we're saying as well. Um, but yeah, it's Argentina France 3-3. It starts off with a Messi PK, and then Di Maria gets honestly one of the best like team goals you can just watch in any kind of game. And that's what it is at halftime. Argentina France at this point don't even have a shot on goal. It's just they've been lethargic. They've been off it. And that's basically like the 80th minute. Carlo Morani is able to get past Otamendi. He's brought down. It's PK awarded, and then Mbappe converts. Getting it past Emi Martinez is no small feat, as we've seen. And then the France tie this basically 90 seconds later with an absolute insane individual goal by Mbappe. I was trying to think who even like thinks to try to hit that on the volley. You could you think of many people that try to maybe take a touch, but I think him hitting it first time, it honestly fools Emi Martinez, and he hits it with basically he gets a sweet spot. I mean Martinez has no shot. He even gets a hand on it, but it's hit too hard. And that was and at that point you're like, uh-oh. It gets to extra time, and then Messi finally gets his open play goal. So it wasn't just a PK. I mean, Messi was involved in every goal that they scored. I think he was involved with 10 goals throughout the entire tournament, which basically rivals what Maradona did, and I think 86. To kind of bring comparisons that way. And then Mbappe gets the PK after he forces it. It's the Argentina can't defend the corner kick. The ball gets to Mbappe. He takes a shot, and I mean I know Jeremy disagrees, but Montreal does jump up and he has his arm raised, and it's called, and that's where we're at. So I think we'll just kind of get started with the game. I mean, what were your first takeaways? Either or.
Oh.
Rex, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Oh man, well, I don't know, man. I really thought the lineup adjustments by both coaches was pretty good, pretty spot on. I know Deschamps he didn't really have a choice after that terrible start. But I like that he at least made like the subs early, because we talk about like coaches waiting like a little bit too long and it's too late. So I like that he made changes early, but he was basically forced to do it. And then we hyped up Di Maria. We thought Di Maria would be a perfect weapon to counter Mbappe pressing up, and Scaloni did go with Di Maria, which was fun to watch. I don't know, man. It was just kind of we talked about it was the final that we wanted, and it ended up being so much more than that. It was such a great game. And Jeremy has talked about, you know, at the internet, like international games usually aren't this good. We find these kind of games at the club level, but this was definitely an international game and an international final that really delivered. And sometimes, those finals aren't that good either. But no, this one was fantastic. The numbers, I think y'all have seen the numbers compared to the Super Bowl. It's like 4 billion watched compared to 100 million for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just good. It's good. Soccer's getting its due, and hopefully it'll be more popular in the United States. I think every year it gets a little bit more popular here in the States. So I don't know, man. I think it's a really good World Cup, and it's something to build on and look forward to in 3.5 years. So it was awesome. It was awesome, and hopefully the international game's getting a little better too, because we saw just a boatload of really good games, and the format too. I think they're going to keep, because the last day of those games in the group stages were just awesome. Especially like everything was so close. So I think they're going to stick with that for now too. So I don't know, man. It was just really happy. It was a good way to cap off this tournament, and man, it was awesome, and it leaves me wanting a little bit more soccer. But we don't have to wait too
Yeah,
long,
I was gonna say.
thankfully. So we got a week about. So
It's weird. I think I've flipped on this, and I think Ben's going to want to talk about this. We do have soccer right around the corner. I think Brighton plays a Carling Cup game or something in 24 hours or something. But
Liverpool City tomorrow.
City tomorrow.
Or
But
Thursday. Yeah.
I almost feel like in some ways after seeing this, I almost feel a little bit weird going back to that. Rex mentioned, that the quality here has really gone up in the international game, but also I think I kind of like how uneven it is. I was texting Ben about this. One of the things that was the most impressive about this game to me, this is a little bit nerdy, is both teams had just entirely different players and entirely different strengths. And like Argentina has for years not been able to find a number 9. They've got Julian Alvarez, who's not even really a number 9, and then and then Argentina doesn't have any wingers anymore. I mean, Di Maria at age 35 is the best winger they've got, and he could probably play another 10 years and still be the best winger they've got. They've got a boatload of attacking midfielders, but they don't have the players that France has. France has young wingers, young pacey wingers by the dozens. I mean, they were bringing on players in the 119th minute that could probably start for Argentina. And they've got center backs galore. I mean, William Saliba, did he get a minute this World Cup? And he's probably the best.
I think he did play in one, like came off the bench in one game, I think, but that was it.
And Argentina's playing Nicolas Otamendi, who we thought was done and dusted at
last World Cup
Malaga in like 2014.
Yeah, that's true.
So it was just what I like about it is that Ben, I know this is something you want to say, is that you can't go. There isn't this was in Qatar, but you couldn't have the Qatari-backed club go out there and buy the players that the team needed. Argentina couldn't dip into the transfer market, before this game and suddenly get, Neymar to play on the wing. And it just made it really thrilling and exciting and kind of unpredictable. And it was, these teams played so differently. And I don't feel like I get that always at the club level. You get the disparity between top and bottom clubs, and some of the top clubs play differently, although they're starting to play more alike. But it just never feels this different. And I don't know. I kind of really like that. And this is coming from somebody who used to just bash international soccer, who thought the 2010 and 2014 World Cups were kind of boring. And yep. This one, it kind of brought me back.
Oh, well, I was actually going to ask you about that. That's funny you even said that. I mean, I do think basically the 5 subs did change a lot of this.
Yeah.
But something that Rex said, I think is right too. It wasn't just a great final, and it's almost fitting that this final happened in. I want to say it's probably the best World Cup, at least in our lifetime, or at least that we can think back on, because every single round had good drama. I mean, the group stage in the final, that third round. There were so many storylines were just and massive upsets. And we got some regional diversity we weren't really expecting, but it didn't go all the way. I mean, we still got a dream final. But just every stage was pretty good, except for maybe that round of 16. But the round of 16 set up 8 fantastic quarters. So that's something you can stomach. I mean, another thing I'm trying to think of is I can't really think of another time where. Jeremy said something where, or he texted me that he thought France was going to win because football isn't always romantic, or usually not romantic, in that respect. And I think he's usually right. I mean, that basically, Jose Mourinho basically has a career because of that. Diego Simeone.
Yeah.
And this game gave us everything. It gave us. I mean, it was set up as basically like, I don't know, Mahomes versus Josh Allen, and that's almost what we got. Even though it didn't feel like it was going to be like that until like 80 minutes to go in the game. But we got Mbappe and Messi basically giving us their peak in a way that I can't really recall us getting in any other sport. Now, I know, people older, I guess, have like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. That's the only thing I can really think of, at least, for a final. So we were really fortunate. I mean, because you can't really do that with, it's hard to do that with like, team sports anyways. You can't really do that with like quarterback to quarterback. Because you go into different. Anyways, that's kind of just going off something else.
The closest thing would be like Real Madrid with Ronaldo versus Messi at Barca, right?
Yeah, that's
like
a good one.
Big El Clasico games.
I guess, but true. But I mean, I don't look at that as the same thing on this kind of level.
Yeah, different stage. Yeah,
definitely.
But we truly got everything. In a way that, in a weird. I mean, it didn't. It always felt like Argentina was going to do something that was going to basically either be a letdown or basically have Messi like kind of crying at the end, and just somehow, some way, I called it like Destiny FC, that basically kind of panned out. So yeah, it was just really unique, I thought.
Let me see if I get you guys' take, because I was thinking about this morning, because there's been a lot of discussion. Was this the best final ever? Not just World Cup final, but final. Was this the best game ever? And I saw the pushback being that for about 70 plus minutes, 70 odd minutes, it was a one-sided affair, which I think it was. I mean,
Yep.
France had a really bad first half. I think they had a 0.0 xG, no shots.
They didn't have a shot.
Yeah.
And so, but I was thinking about this. I think what made this game so great is you could envision a game that was back and forth throughout, but I think it doesn't really churn up the emotion because there isn't anything that a team needs to overcome or a team needs to let go of. So the only thing I can think of that's almost relevant here is the Champions League second legs, where there is a team like a Barcelona that's holding on to a 3-goal lead, and they're just giving up goal after goal, and there's always something at stake no matter how the way the team's playing. So that's the only emotion I can kind of recall, because of what I thought was so great about this game is it wasn't back and forth until the end, but by the 70th minute, if you're a France fan, you're pretty much out the door. You're pretty much ready to turn the television off. You're furious. You've been watching the last couple of weeks as this France team dispatched England and Morocco, and you're thinking like, this World Cup's ours. And then all of a sudden you get that glimmer of hope of the penalty, and then the immediate Mbappe goal, which I think we probably didn't talk about. It's just an amazing goal. It's probably one of the best World Cup goals. And especially that second Argentina goal is probably up there as well. But it then just becomes crazy, and the emotion for both sides. I mean, could you imagine being an Argentinian fan watching that game and thinking that you've pretty much won it? You can only imagine that's what the players were going through, is why they gave up the goal so quickly, is that they were so overcome by the fact that they thought they had the cup in their hands and it was immediately snatched away. And I think that makes that extra time period so remarkable, is that they do kind of wriggle back. That is impressive. But yeah, I just think in a weird way, it kind of makes the game greater, even though because it wasn't so great. There's something kind of ironic about it. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
I mean, I'll just kind of cut in, Rex. I put down that basically, to make a game, I think, great or memorable, it doesn't necessarily have to be great all the way through, kind of like what you were saying. I just said it has to surprise you throughout.
Yeah.
And that's what this did. Like, I had so many different emotions watching this, and I was just a neutral, kind of like what you were saying. But what's weird is, and you kind of felt it too, once Deschamps did kind of make those subs, you started to see France winning those second balls that they weren't winning. All of a sudden, Argentina's dominance in midfield wasn't really happening. All of a sudden, they were kind of pinned back, and it coincided with Di Maria going off. Maybe Jeremy, I got to talk about that.
Oh yeah, true.
It almost seemed like they changed shape from basically the 4-3-3 that was working to almost a 4-4-2, because they took off Di Maria and brought on Acuna, who is, I think he's a left back at Sevilla. And so basically, it seemed like Argentina was basically, they're defending the 2-goal lead, but they're also getting pinned back a little bit more. And that kind of allowed France to kind of own the positional battle. And it just felt, it did feel like if France could get one, there was going to be trouble. And what's crazy is they're basically undone by, I want to say it's absolutely genius by Mbappe. He gets the ball maybe by Camavinga, and Mbappe, without even taking a touch, just basically flicks the ball over. I think it's Romero. And then Muani, it just he starts like five steps behind Otamendi, and is able to just catch up. And Otamendi basically almost has to bring him down, or maybe he needs to bring him down before he gets in the box. I don't know if that could have been a red card or not. But Mbappe was also the first one to get past everyone. Mbappe's there for a square ball. If Otamendi doesn't try to bring him down, it was just the way Muani was able to just run past everyone was impressive. He was a really good sub in that second. It almost like he changed. He at least kind of stopped the bleeding a little bit, and then the insert of Camavinga and Coman just kind of changed everything. It seemed.
Rex, I want to ask you. I got to leave it shortly, but I want to know your thoughts on the penalty shootout, because I thought it was such a gulf of personality and technique with the goalkeepers, with the way that they were actually approaching the shootout. It seemed like, Martinez was borderline comical. I don't know if you saw the full replay of the Tchouameni shot, but he basically tossed the ball 30 feet away and forced it. And he's gesticulating, not just after the final whistle, but he's also doing that after every shot that's saved or missed. And then Lloris. One thing I thought was crazy about him was, okay, so this is the new penalty tactic, which is to do the run up, to look at the goalkeeper, and then to wait for them to move to a side, and then you shoot to the opposite side. I mean, I think once Messi sort of rediscovered that, I think actually his penalty form this World Cup really improved. But it seemed like one thing Martinez did a great job of is he would be constantly moving when the penalty taker was going up.
He would go up and down with his legs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like right before they would shoot, he would kind of like fake to go to like one side and then go back to that side. Lloris didn't do any of that, and it seemed like at some point I was amazed that he never changed his routine, never changed his tactic, and I counted it. I actually watched it again this morning. Every single penalty for Argentina either went down the middle or to Lloris's right, and it seemed like he didn't learn. So I just want to know if your thoughts, if you thought that maybe that was just his style and he's just wedded to it, or if there was something else missing.
Oh, I'll tell you what. I think it is his style, but he's also older, so I kind of get that. Like you don't teach a old dog new tricks kind of thing, and Martinez is is younger, so maybe he's just like more adaptable. Because you're right though, like watching the game live, just Martinez looked before the shot was even taken. It looked like he was going to save them, just because he was like moving back and forth and doing all the talking and the intimidation things. Yeah. And I mean it works though, and he keeps doing it because it worked, especially in Copa America. He kind of did the same kind of things in PKs, and he did the Jeremy, the humping or whatever thing that he did. He did that in the Copa America as well. So yeah, I don't know. Lloris should have, like in hindsight, he should have, but I think he's just, he's been a keeper for such a long time. He's probably a little set in his ways, honestly. And there were a couple shots to his right that he actually did get like fingertips to, but they were just hit so hard that he couldn't really, do enough to keep it out. Maybe if he did adopt, kind of what Emmy was doing, maybe he could have gotten to a couple, or at least you got to try to get into the penalty kicker's head, because really, like, the more pressure's on them. So I think just doing what Emmy Martinez did, it's kind of, it's kind of douchey, but at this level,
your douche. If you're Argentina fan, he's
oh hell yeah, and it works. I mean, it works. And if you can get in someone's head, man, I would do it too.
Do you guys remember that, like, really early in the game? I mean, there's a reason why this had, like, something like 8 minutes of stoppage time. 5 or so minutes into the game, Romero almost kind of like goes into Lloris and basically, I don't know, kind of gets him in the ribs. Do you think Lloris maybe actually played through some pain? It didn't feel like he was diving that much, and like the save he had on
maybe, but I thought he still had some great saves. I think there were still some. He had a great Messi save that I think is probably going to get overlooked. It's probably like the 30th most interesting thing in this game. But I think even Rex, you were texting the group, like that was a great save.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It was to him. You talking about the missile?
Yeah, but I still think it's a great. Yeah, you've seen that go in. I don't know. I don't want to read too much into the. I haven't heard that conspiracy theory, but I don't want to read too much of that.
Not really a conspiracy. It's just like maybe he was playing hurt. Just kind of. I don't
know. But his
maybe his ribs are bruised.
His record though was not good at all. I almost wonder if I think why I was posing this question. I almost wonder if Deschamps could have saved a final sub to bring on a new keeper and just sort of throw at the Argentina players' heads, because they almost seem they just look so confident taking those penalty kicks. I mean, the Dybala one. I mean, it was the Messi one.
The Messi one was almost
practically rolled in.
Right,
it was
amazing. Yeah. Ooh, can't save that.
I mean,
sorry, I hijacked that with goalkeeper talk. Sorry.
No. I mean,
I love it.
You're good. I mean, I don't know what else to. I don't want to necessarily. I mean. Why? What? I mean, I guess I'll ask you, Jeremy. I mean, why did you think France started off so slow? I mean, did you buy the illness maybe being a bigger story than maybe people were letting on, or do you just think Deschamps actually just got the first half wrong, and was able to kind of readjust in the second half?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to answer that because I don't know. I think one thing I like about this game is, I'm sort of punting the answer. Sorry, Ben.
It's all good.
Is one reason I kind of like this game is because France to get back into it. That narrative sort of is gone. I mean, I saw that Deschamps revived it a little bit after the game, but for the most part, aside from like French media, you go and type in World Cup on Google, it's not any of the first 100 results. I think if this game goes 2-0, you're a journalist, you're struggling for storylines, and it is an easy one to pick, and it may be correct. I do think that if I was going to answer it truthfully and say that it wasn't the illness, which it may very, very, very well have been, I do think that there are some criticisms for Deschamps, which is that his team is very, very reactive. And I think that he hasn't been willing to do something that Scaloni did, which is that change up his style based on the opposition and try to exploit their weaknesses or try to defend against other teams' strengths. He just kind of sets up in the same way every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have to give him credit for those early substitutions. Although I do think the game really doesn't change that much until some later substitutions. Kingsley Coman, for example.
Yeah.
But I do think that that this may have just been France's his unwillingness to change things showing up, because this was unfortunately, and this is not a game for Griezmann. Argentina really set up tight in that midfield and that zone that he's been so good at, especially in these deeper roles this tournament. Griezmann, it just wasn't the game for him. That Argentina back line needed to be stretched. That's why you need to move Mbappe in the central area. And then the ironic thing here is Giroud goes off and the game opens up. But actually, you think almost by the end of the game, you kind of want Giroud to get back in there because France are could probably hold the ball up. But yeah, I guess I don't buy the illness too much, just because he did start some of those players who were sick. But I'd be curious to hear you guys' thoughts, or if you think I'm wrong.
I kind of agree with Jeremy, but
you go, Rex.
Yeah, well, I think I agree with Jeremy because, it sounds like the guys that were sick were had fevers and were in bed, and so if they're not good to go, if they're not pretty damn close to 100%, Deschamps has options that he doesn't have to play those guys. I think maybe Rabiot, he was a little off the pace that he usually is, but at this point that could be more just to game minutes than him coming back from being sick, honestly. And he didn't look too bad. So yeah, I kind of agree with Jeremy on that one.
I mean, I just wanted to kind of get that question out there because I know that's kind of been talked about. I agree with what you guys are saying. Basically, I just thought the setup was entirely wrong. And to start at least the graphic, I think it showed 4-3-3 with maybe Griezmann as an 8. I don't think so. I think he played as a 10. I think it was a 4-2-3-1. And what you saw was Tchouaméni did not necessarily have the best game, but he was asked to basically cover the middle and also cover on that right side, and because he wasn't necessarily able to do that, that forced Dembélé to basically do all that defensive work, and we saw Dembélé didn't necessarily like doing that either, because I think they were surprised by Argentina playing Di Maria on that side. We thought if Di Maria was going to play, he was going to be played on the right side, and instead they went after Koundé, which was interesting. But another thing too was just the way Griezmann was playing as a 10. It almost felt like France were outnumbered in midfield to basically start the game, and then when Messi was dropping deep, it was almost 2v4. And so France were basically it almost seemed like they were fine just playing without the ball, sitting deep and trying to do the counter stuff. But Argentina were not turning the ball over. And the first half was 89% pass accuracy. And so when France were getting the ball, another thing that I saw was it was almost from Argentina kind of just kicking the ball out of bounds or stuff. Argentina was almost set in defense that entire second half, and they were able to basically mask Mbappe a little bit out of the game, because not only did you have Molina was basically sitting further back than he was. I mean, he was making some runs, but he was shadowed by either Rodrigo de Paul or even Romero was kind of focusing on him, and you could do that because you didn't have any kind of threat with Giroud running behind you. So it wasn't the game for Giroud to play, and it wasn't the game for Griezmann. And I think Jeremy mentioned the reason for the second subs. The main thing was taking off Griezmann. It's possible you didn't have to take off Dembélé, even though he wasn't playing his best game. A lot of people were going off on Dembélé. It was Griezmann that had the shocker. Frankly, once he went off, everything changed.
Kind of a shame, because he probably I haven't seen the tournament, but I think going into this game, there's a lot of talk about if France won, he may have actually gotten the golden ball. So heck of a 90, 120 minutes for him, because he is sort of forgotten here for this World Cup.
He hasn't been doing that well at club either.
Yeah, I just think it's that kind of player profile is going out of date, to be honest. Now you can play with a false 9 and kind of do that, and that's what Messi did. But everyone on Argentina runs to make that up. With France, you have Mbappe. You can't do it with 3, and that's what you saw in that first half. You saw Giroud, Mbappe, and Griezmann, all kind of being lackadaisical and not really bothering to press, and just every time it seemed, or even Giroud and Mbappe tried to do token pressure, Griezmann was allowing Enzo to be completely free, and it was really easy for Argentina to just kind of pass through that. Um, so
Kind of the same reason why most people think PSG won't ever win the Champions League with, Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe not coming back. Like you said, three you can't do three not coming back unless you have a lot of talent and you want to win League One, but you're not going to win Champions League with three not coming back.
and that
Yeah, I
is
was stunned. I don't know if you guys heard this. I saw the stat after the game. Guess who the player was this tournament with the least amount of defensive pressures?
it's probably Mbappe.
Yeah, it's Mbappe. I would have.
Really?
It
Yeah.
might have been Messi.
I was thinking Messi. Yeah.
Messi
But it
was
was-
running pretty hard, at least for the final. I can't speak for the other games.
So yeah, I thought he's gonna. It's gonna be interesting. I got to go in a second, but I'll go run it over. But I do think it's gonna be interesting to see what Mbappe takes for this game. There were some thoughts after it that he's gonna. You almost feel bad for him in some ways, even though he's already got a World Cup. I think Rex mentioned that you only feel so bad for him because he's got that World Cup, but he's still kind of in the shadow. Talking about Messi in the Maradona's shadow, but like Mbappe, he hasn't quite taken the mantle yet, and it's because this older great goat, whatever you want to call it, is still hanging around there, and it's almost like, is he gonna like force a move? I could almost see
He
just
should have gone to
forcing a move.
Madrid.
Yeah, should have gone to Madrid. And yeah, we think France is stacked for the next World Cup, but these games there's a lot of crazy stuff can happen in these games, and you could have injuries. And
Well,
but yeah, one thing I do want to say before I go on is I think we do have to just talk about how remarkable Mbappe is, because what is he at? He's at 12 goals now for the World Cup, and he's 4 off Miroslav Klose, who's 36 when he set that record. So
four instead of two, the two that Mbappe's played in.
So he scored he's a second player ever to score a hat trick in the final. He's the first player ever to score a hat trick in a final and lose the game. I mean, he can pretty much go to that locker room after the game and look around and say, where the hell were the rest of you guys? Now, 2 of those were penalties, but he is the most. I will say this, and this I'll include Messi and Ronaldo here. He is the most terrifying player I think I've ever had to root against, because when he gets going and when like the game opens up and the game gets frantic. He can score a goal so fast, and he shoots the ball. I mean, his shot making this tournament was unbelievable. That volley is just such a clean strike. He doesn't even really generate that much power from his foot. It's actually just how clearly he hits the ball.
He just redirects the power from the cross. Yeah,
he is. I can't think of a player in another sport. It's almost like Tom Brady-esque, where it's just it feels so. It feels like this. If he gets the ball, he's going to score. I don't feel that way with any other player.
Steph Curry-ish, kind of.
Yeah,
like if he takes a three, he's going to make it. Yes, yeah, I agree.
Like Messi, you got him. You can pretty much box him around the goal, and use his gravity to draw other players. Mbappe's. I mean, he almost had a couple solo runs in this game that I think could have, in another world, he's got 5 goals.
That pace, like that extraordinary pace, just takes him over the top. Like. Yeah, Jeremy, if you're a defender and he's running at you with pace, like that would be terrifying.
Not just pace, like he's a mix of pace and quickness.
We've got everything.
He can do side to side. Like he's actually gotten really, really good in tight spaces, not just in open games. Yeah, I mean, but one thing I wanted to ask you, Jeremy, is it does feel like France basically have everything set to be the favorites and basically be our generation's Brazil. But one thing you kind of look at, and I want to get kind of maybe your kind of last take before you leave, is it did feel that they're missing some kind of. They don't have what Enzo Pereira is or Enzo Fernandez is. It doesn't seem like Tchouaméni is that player yet. Maybe he can become that player. It doesn't feel like Camavinga is that player. And it does feel like what you saw is they didn't necessarily have the only outlets was Mbappe, really, or to getting the ball out wide to the 2 wide players that came on, Thuram and Kulu Muani. But they didn't have someone that was able to kind of link up between basically the center backs to the mid to get that final ball in, or to get the ball in like basically the middle third. And it feels like if there was a critique of this French team, I think it's that.
Yeah, I think that's right, and it goes back to something I think we talked about at a couple of these podcasts ago, which is that this was kind of like the redemption. I think Rex said this is a redemption tournament or Ben, maybe you said that, but I think it's also a redemption tournament for midfield.
Mhm.
I sort of read it off the midfield as a really important zone and thought that just this was going to be the tournament of Brazil and France. It's the two teams I picked to go to the final, not because of their midfield, but because of what they can do outside of their midfield. Not that they don't have great midfielders; they're just very workmanlike, and they're not really looking to create or control games. They're just looking to exploit teams up top and down the wings. And what I think was so clever, what Scaloni did was he he tinkered with that. Enzo Fernandez wasn't a starter the first two games,
Right.
the first game at least. In
Yeah.
the second game, he was actually playing a more advanced role. And in this game, if you go back and watch it,
He's a
I went
six.
back and watched it this morning. He's deep. He's bringing the ball out of defense, and there's really nobody in the world that I at this tournament so far, maybe Modric or somebody aside, that he is able to bring the ball out of defense so well and just he'll get a little bit of pressure, kind of fake the pass to the side, and then keep turning, and then just hold the ball. He's just so clever. And I'd be curious if France can either go out and find that sort of player, if they can maybe develop that sort of player with Gimenny or Camavinga, or if they're just going to continue to just do what they do really well. And that may just be it, because like I said, like we talked about, France easily could have won this game. And yes, Deschamps got it wrong, but you can imagine a scenario where he gets it right and they win anyway.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I want to say a quick thing. I am obviously over the moon that Messi won a World Cup. I that's like that, probably the happiest thing that's happened to me in sporting wise in like 10 years. So I will say that it's. I think my biggest takeaway from this game is just that Messi won a World Cup and honestly puts to bed, I think, a debate between him and Ronaldo. But I'll be curious to see if that still rages on the next year or so. He might win another Ballon d'Or, which is crazy too. But
I think so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
all right, I'll see you guys.
See
All
you,
right, man.
Jeremy. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, thinking of the controller, there's a guy on Lyon right now. I think he's 22, Maxence Kakare,
Oh
who
gosh,
kind
yeah.
of fits that kind of mold. But the problem is he's slight build. That's the issue. Like the one thing I'm worried about a little bit, at least looking at that French squad, is can you play? I mean, Argentina, I guess, were able to do it with like Alexis McAllister and whatnot. But it just feels like the game is kind of morphing into you have to be not just technically gifted, but physically dominant to play in midfield with the way
Oh
that the
yeah.
challenges are coming in. Um,
Yeah, and people get hurt all the time in midfield too, so you kind of, you can't really be injury prone either. And if you are, you like Partey, dominant, but he's kind of injury prone, and it shows up in the midfield especially. Like, and then you can't really get healthy if you're, getting tackled hard every game.
so I want to at least kind of focus. I mean, just basically kind of zero in a little bit on the game. I mean, we don't have to necessarily go through like chance by chance. But one thing I want to kind of get out is I wonder if you can kind of notice this. I mean, Messi mentioned how Enzo was basically the one dropping deep, and what he was doing is anytime Romero or Otamendi had the ball, what he was doing is he was wherever he was on the pitch, he was showing for himself to get the ball. And if if Griezmann would try to move, or someone would try to mark him up, that would make room open for someone else. But more often than not, they actually just weren't marking him. But another thing that was happening was Messi was dropping deep into midfield to get the ball, and that's a place where center backs, Upamecano doesn't really want to go. Rabiot and Tchouaméni had basically were two before. Now, obviously, you could have focused on Messi, but they didn't for some reason. But one thing that was happening so often was as Messi was dropping deep, Alexis McAllister was making a forward run, almost disguised, almost simultaneously. And it worked so many times where they were able to get Alexis McAllister almost free. And McAllister's the reason why they score a couple of these goals. He's the
Yeah, he
reason
had a
why they
great
scored the
tournament.
second one. And it's credit to Brighton really because of how they've been able to scout. We've talked about Moises Caicedo. He's on Brighton as well. But I mean, the commentator, because we watched it last night, not on the Fox commentary. So it was, I guess, a like stream, like I guess
Oh,
the UK one. And
yeah.
the commentator said something that at first sounded outlandish, but it really isn't. He said that the more that he sees Alexis McAllister, the more he can actually envision once Messi actually does hold it up, he can see that 20 becoming a 1 or that 2 becoming a 1 and becoming their next 10. And it's just wild how Brighton maybe have that player. And credit to them for scouting him and just the way, like you said, the way there's so many people to talk about with that midfield. I mean, Enzo Fernandez was spectacular. He almost showed up Chouameni. Rodrigo De Paul was good in his own way as well. But Alexis McAllister was special in a way that maybe people just
Yeah.
weren't expecting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird because he's very good for Brighton, but he doesn't necessarily dominate. But he still is really good, and I would tip him to have a great second half of the year. And maybe there's a bigger move after in the summer after the season, and the same would be for Enzo. I'm already seeing like big clubs are wanting Enzo as well. So
I mean,
it also
yes.
can make a big money move. But like you mentioned, like Alexis McAllister's got to be, worried about minutes if he does go somewhere. Like, I don't know, if Chelsea wanted him or something. Versus, he'd play every game for Brighton. How much would he play for a bigger team like Chelsea? So they
I
got to
think he would
weigh
play.
that. But
I honestly think he would play every game. And what's kind of funny is it's taken a while for him to actually be inserted into the squad because we saw him
it
almost playing
has,
as like
yeah.
an attacking eight in this tournament, and he almost plays as like a double pivot holder when he plays with Brighton. He can do it all, to be honest. Um,
Yeah, he's fun to watch.
and the only issue is
But I think
maybe his build, but
his
that's about it.
build, yeah, yeah, that would be true. But he was really fun to watch for Argentina, especially, and it's more like maybe Brighton can kind of move him around like Argentina did, playing where Argentina did, maybe if they need to. Just another little wrinkle they could use possibly.
And another thing to kind of touch on Brighton, to kind of talk up their scouting. I don't know if you know this player or not, but also Argentinian. They've already signed the 17-year-old that plays for Carlos Tevez and Facundo Burnett, and he's going to join them, I think, this January. So that'll be another player to maybe kind of play with and to see him develop. It just seems like they've
Where's
got,
he? Is he coming from the Argentina Soccer League?
yeah.
Is it Boca? Boca? Is that where Tevez
It's
is
not
at?
Boca
Boca
Juniors.
Junior?
It's the club that Carlos Tevez coaches.
I don't know.
Rosario.
River Plate?
It's not River Plate. Enzo was from
I have
River
no
Plate.
idea.
Um, but
Ah,
but that's another thing too. Like I think one thing that maybe a couple of these, the German league and basically La Liga have kind of ignored is the German league's focused on like helping Bayern win titles. La Liga has focused on basically helping Real Madrid and Barca basically compete for Champions League. But you've like the French league is actually, while PSG has their fun, the French league has a lot of really good academy systems. It's not just PSG, it's Marseille, it's Lyon. But like this, like the reason why this French team is just so dominant is a lot. It's created all of these young players, and they're more underneath. And it's just like Kulu Muani is a product from Nantes. Now he's playing at Eintracht Frankfurt, but he spent like the most of his young career at Nantes, and it's like it's players like that. There's a player, Marcus Thuram's brother, kept from Thuram, who I think is like 21, and maybe he's gonna have a spot in the 2026 squad, and he's at Nice, and it's just it feels like other leagues aren't necessarily thinking of that. I know the Bundesliga does allow like youth players, but you're not. It doesn't feel the same. France just seem to have. It's not just a giant talent pool; they're also developing them better.
yeah, I think so. I think you're right. But part of that, well, I mean, some of those guys, I guess, end up leaving Ligue 1 eventually.
Hmm.
But yeah, like France has always been very good with the young talent. French coaches, especially, like I mean, I think of like Wenger, obviously, very good at nurturing young talent. So I think it's like just a French thing, maybe. They're just very very good at that. And you're right, Ben. There's a guy I think on Lens right now that is like a young winger that's really good. There's a ton of them, and it's hard to like pay attention to all of them, but they're always linked to like big moves, and then I go and I look at their stats. I'm like, whoa, they actually had really good years. So yeah, Ben, you're right, and I'd look out for some of those guys making moves to other leagues too, and some will probably stay there as well. But I mean, yeah, the coaches for France just do very well with young talent.
And it feels like Argentina's finally started to kind of maybe invest a little bit more into their I guess domestic league because and it's not just about having a domestic league to like brag about the rights like necessarily the MLS and what we do. I mean Enzo Fernandez is a product of River Plate. Julian Alvarez was playing I think at it might have been River Plate as well. And
Yeah, I
then
think so.
you have this Facundo guy, and it does feel like Argentina are able to, or at least it's not necessarily going to say they'll be able to move on without Messi, but it does seem in a way that maybe we weren't expecting. The next generation is coming for them as well. That can maybe
Yeah.
be something for us to follow.
Yeah, they're at least going to be, you would think, competitive without Messi. Like it's not like it's they're going to be struggling to make World Cups or struggling to get out of groups.
I mean,
But yeah, they'll be a little let down, but they're still going to be plenty talented enough to do things.
the midfield three is probably going to be able to play in 2026. Jeremy mentioned they don't really produce wingers. Alejandro Garnacho feels like he's going to be able to fit that mold as well as another player for them. I mean, Martinez just feels like
Yeah,
he's going to be a keeper that's probably going to leave Aston Villa somewhere by this time. But he seems a monster. And not
yeah.
just one thing that's really impressive to me is he didn't have to do anything for like 90% of that game. And even before it got to the PKs, the save he has on Kulu is out of
Oh,
this world.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
that's. I mean, they lose the game if he doesn't make that save. It was that was a jaw dropping save for me. I mean, it was amazing. Not only just because it was a great save, but because if that goes in, there's not much time left. It's probably ball game. So it was a clutch save too. And like you said, after not doing too much, it's hard to like stay into the game and ready, even if you might not touch the ball at all till the end, and it's an amazing shot and save to win or at least to keep the game going in the PK. So yeah, and keepers play longer too. So who knows how long he's going to play for Argentina?
and so we'll just kind of, like I said, we'll kind of ignore the game at least going doing during the recap. We'll just kind of get into like general takes at least on both Argentina and France, and then we'll move basically to the tournament and then kind of close shop. We'll try to keep it quick. But we should kind of talk a little bit about Messi. Um, yeah, I did want to kind of get. I wish Jeremy had spoken a little bit more, but yeah, it's one of those things where short for time. But one of the things that I think just kind of showed up, at least watching him again, was for anyone raising a kid, you need to get, or that's basically starting to play soccer or football. I say at the earliest age possible, get them comfortable dribbling with their left foot because it feels like that's a secret weapon that just not enough defenders or not enough offensive players actually have, especially when you're playing inverted, because it's so much harder for a defender to run across the body than necessarily run on their dominant foot, run on the right side. And that's what Messi's been able to do pretty much his entire life. People wonder how, well, he's never been able to do like the step overs. How does he beat people? And it's because he gets them off balance by feinting, and that because he's with that left foot, he's able to just kind of get players off balance, and that's when his quote unquote speed or quickness kicks in, and
But yeah,
that's it's just solid tries to do that, but I can't think of anyone else that really does that, at least to the degree that Messi does. And just again, that's one of those things where it comes to his uniqueness. But I want to get this out there. I don't know what more there is to say. He is the Golden Ball winner. A few PKs, but he was instrumental in basically every
yeah,
goal they scored this tournament. Directly responsible for 10 goals. I think it's 7 goals
that's
and three
insane.
assists,
Wow,
or 8 goals and two assists, something like
and
that.
2 assists.
Maradona had 5 goals and 5 assists in '86. But it's not just this tournament. It's 92 goals in a calendar year in 2012. People have used computers to calculate his 2012 La Liga season, and the XG non-penalty goals was I think like 17, and 1 in 1,000 chances of like someone like beating that by 1 in 1,000 I guess percent was 30 goals. He scored
Ooh.
42 that season. It's something like a 1 in a million chance, and this is like 1 in 1,000 professionals. That 2012
Mhm.
13 season is basically the best ever, maybe for an individual, and that is something I don't think we'll ever see again. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah, he had goals and assists too. Like because Ronaldo, obviously the goals, but if you compare assists, Messi's way better with that too. I mean, because the goals are like pretty close as well, but
yeah,
Messi's assist just in my mind puts him over the top.
he's got like 300 assists over his career.
Yeah, it's
Um,
outrageous. Yeah.
and then he's able to not only Golden Boot for Argentina's first Copa in forever, which was also won in Brazil.
Mhm.
And Jeremy mentioned the 7 Ballon d'Ors, and I do think he's on his way to number 8. So Yeah, I mean, I just kind of
It's
wanted to
insane. Yeah.
get that out there. I'm reading off my own
Yeah.
notes because I couldn't necessarily do that off the top of my head. But I mean, what do you want to say about Messi?
Yeah, I mean, he's the third player on the Mount Rushmore. I think it puts him cements his spot with the legends. He might have already been there, anyway, honestly. But the World Cup definitely puts him over the top. And like we talked about, it was like the one thing that he needed on his resume, the one thing he hasn't really won that he has competed in, and now he finally has it. And we talked about how the media in Argentina is pretty critical of him, or at least has been in the past. Even though obviously, like Jeremy said, he was the best player on the Argentina team for a couple World Cups, and he didn't really have much help. But still, he gets a lot of the blame when they don't deliver. So it was really nice to see him win finally. And I mean, he's had problems with the Argentina national team. Like he didn't play for a couple months at least, right? Didn't he kind of retire
Yeah,
after 2014, I think, or
I
something?
think he retired
And
after
then
2015 after they missed the Copa.
2015,
I think they lost. They
yeah.
lost the Copa.
And I think that was because like all the criticism, the media was just piling on criticism. So it's nice to see him like rise above it and kind of shut them down. And look at him now. And people are saying he only lived in Argentina for a little bit, and then he has basically was in Spain his whole life. So people were kind of like he's not even Argentinian. So it's great, man, because you could tell it like that expectation, that pressure, it was weighing on him. But this World Cup, it really didn't seem like it was weighing on him. And maybe
I
it's
agree.
like them winning the Copa. They kind of unburdened him. They finally did win a trophy. Maybe that's what it was. But yeah, he didn't shrink from the pressure, and he does have more talent around him too, obviously. But yeah, it was great, man. I'm like Jeremy. I was just very happy to see him win. I think he is very deserving of it. And now hopefully the media in Argentina will kind of get off his back and start, maybe not even comparing him to Maradona. Just have them just both be legends, and you don't have to compare them anymore.
Well, that's kind of yeah. I mean, and again, I started off the show that way for a reason because I got into the habit of doing that last week, and I don't really like it. You should celebrate both.
Yeah,
And
it's just
there's no
like you
reason
said,
not
it's
to anymore.
different eras.
Yeah.
Different eras too, and especially in a World Cup, like formats change, team number, like how many teams are in change, things like that.
And I mentioned something where I was like, I discounted his World Cup because of the handball. He scored basically like the greatest World Cup individual goal ever in that same game. So at worst, it's probably 1-1 versus England. Maybe it goes to PKs. So I mean, I just kind of misremembered. But it isn't just Messi. So one thing he didn't have in 2014 that he was able to have this game was he had basically Di Maria that was at least able to play 60 minutes. And we saw his impact for the goal, but also he drew the PK. But another thing too is Di Maria is the one that scored for Copa in the Copa. I mean, they only win that game 1-0, and they basically win it off Emi Martinez and basically that midfield just being dogs in that
Oh
second
yeah,
half versus Brazil. But Di Maria is the one that gets that goal, and for the longest time, it felt like Messi would basically had to do it all by himself. And so for him to actually have a little help, I think helps. So you have Di Maria that helps in this case, but the other thing was just I don't think he's ever had a keeper like Emi Martinez. And so
yeah,
I mean, do you kind of want to talk a little bit about him? Or I guess you kind of did.
yeah. Well, yeah, he was amazing. Obviously, very deserving of the Golden Glove. But in PKs is just I think you could label him one of the best in the world right now at PKs just by the World Cup performance in PKs. The Netherlands game as well, and then the Copa they won on
Copa.
PKs. So I think he is probably the best keeper at PKs at least. And I think yeah, I mean I think he'll probably leave Villa eventually because he's been kind of let down by the other players. I feel like at Villa, and if they didn't have him, they wouldn't be doing as well, obviously.
I
So I
mean,
don't know. He might be leaving there. I don't know.
this feels kind of harsh because Ramsdale has been fantastic for you guys. But do you somewhat maybe regret Arsenal moving on from him for Leno when they did? This was before they had Ramsdale.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, like they basically couldn't guarantee any game time,
Mhm.
and so basically after they told him that he was the one that wanted to leave, so Arsenal couldn't really keep him. But the thing I do regret is that he was like the third string keeper for years, and like didn't really get to play that much. Obviously, he was pretty young. But the thing I do regret is I would have loved to have seen him get more chances, like before Leno got hurt, before that Leno injury, because he was backing up. I mean, he was probably backing up maybe even
Chesney?
Chesney. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, maybe.
Interesting.
Because I remember seeing him, like, as a third keeper for years, and he just didn't really play. And I was kind of like, well, he can't be that good. And then when he came in some of the cup games, you're like, whoa, he is pretty good. So I do wish he had played more. Maybe you could have sold him for more money, but unfortunately, I think he wanted to leave, and Arsenal knew he was a good keeper, and they were like, we're not going to stand in your way of playing time.
And so I mean, we talked a little bit about Enzo. I do want to talk a little bit about the midfield as well because Jeremy. I think Jeremy hit it right on the head. This was you mentioned redemption. It was a tournament basically for midfield bounce backs. We started off being like, do midfield still matter? And basically Argentina just was like, yes. Croatia kind of told us that too. Just it kind of it was one game just too much. But you know,
Yeah.
Enzo's stats, I just kind of want to read these out. First, Schumann. Now, they weren't necessarily going against each other, but both were playing the same position. Enzo was 77 of 91 passes, 85% accuracy, 11 of 21 ground duels, which is maybe surprising,
Ooh.
and then 118 touches. And then Schumann was 52 to 70 passes, so 74% accuracy, 5 of 8 ground duels. Someone as big as he is, he only went for 8, and then 86 touches. No, he's also playing with Rabiot, so he was playing in a pivot, so it wasn't necessarily the same, but a little bit it kind of was. And I just thought he basically showed him levels, and maybe it's something for maybe Real Madrid to think about.
Yeah, I think so. I think a couple of these players kind of gave their club teams or club managers something to think about, or at least a little wrinkle maybe you can use if a game plan is not working. Yeah, like we talked about, McAllister's kind of like that too. So yeah, man, I think you're right, and I think this is also like just a big confidence boost for the players coming into the second half of their club season. As long as they're not too leggy, too tired, and they get a decent break, because some players have like a week break and in a regular World Cup, they have like a month. So
True.
we talked about the second half of the season, how that's going to play out with tired people and stuff. So that's going to be it's going to be interesting too. But I think some of these guys will be kind of reinvigorated, rejuvenated after like a week or so off. Hopefully,
Well, I mean, it's funny because like one of the third in that midfield, and he's worth saying too because he wasn't necessarily as wonderful on the ball, though he when he was on the when he did have it, his touches and whatnot were clever and tidy, but he just did a lot of the dirty work that you needed, and that was Rodrigo de Paul, and it's he's going back to Atletico Madrid, and it's sometimes Simeone doesn't even play him, and here's another player that would maybe be worth taking a gamble on if Atletico are willing to gamble or a deal.
yeah. And Griezmann could possibly,
Hmm.
be one of those players as well because he wasn't really having that good of a club season so far, and a couple seasons, he hasn't been playing as well. But maybe like this newfound position kind of reinvigorates his season too, and it could reinvigorate people's careers possibly. So yeah, a lot of interesting storylines that are going to play out, a couple weeks after the World Cup. Even that's how impactful having this tournament in the middle of the season is going to be.
And I mean, real quick, I mean, did you think Scaloni made a mistake in not getting fresher legs in that second half?
Maybe I don't know. It's tough to say, like because obviously the blowing the two goal lead. Yeah, maybe he should have. But I don't know. Maybe he was saving those subs as well for something else. I mean, he took Tagliafico off, who I thought that was a smart play to take him off. And he did kind of take off DePaul and McAllister just because they were working so hard.
Hmm.
So I think he did kind of try to freshen things up a little bit. But I don't know. Maybe in overtime, like Jeremy said, how they were able to kind of put out the fact that they really had their hands on the trophy in regular time and kind of blew it. But maybe like kind of what they did in the Netherlands game kind of stuck with them in overtime, and they were kind of like, hey, we can wrestle back momentum in this game because we did it like a week ago against the Netherlands. And that also kind of goes into PKs. They just kind of had PKs like a week ago almost, so they're
Sure.
kind of used to it perhaps. And Emmy made some great saves then as well. So I think that just like gave them more confidence in PKs and in extra time and in the overtime just because they're so good like previously.
And another player I want to kind of mention before we maybe move on to France, or you mentioned actually you had to maybe go soon, so maybe we'll just close
Yeah, I
close
got
up
like
shop.
10 minutes.
All right. Is Lautaro Martinez, because he came on, and one thing I texted Jeremy is maybe for Argentina to win this, he's got to basically beat the Higuain curse or Higuain comparisons. And one thing to say
Oh
is
yeah,
it's not really fair to compare players like that because players are their own player. And I think one thing you saw is yes, he messed up on a couple chances. He messed up on that header at the end, for example. Upamecano was also amazing in a couple of these as well. That's worth saying. It didn't necessarily show up in replay, but on replay, Upamecano was the reason why he didn't score at least those two chances. But it's Martinez
yeah.
is basically responsible why they get the third goal. It's worth kind of saying that. So. Uh, I think it's Enzo Fernandez that plays through Martinez. Martinez is good to hold his run. He's only onside by like a hair, but and this is worth like
Yeah, by
video.
like a butt.
This is like video onside. But he
Hmm.
also he goes for power, but I mean he gets it on goal. He forces Luis to save it, and Luis can only parry it to Messi. But this doesn't happen without Lautaro Martinez, and so I think it's
Yeah,
worth kind of saying that.
yeah, I think so too. And I mean, we've seen like people. I mean, being benched is not a good thing, obviously, but we've seen how some of these people have reacted to coming off the bench, like Ronaldo, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing for these players to handle,
True.
especially because they can come back on the field and they can kind of be mopey. Ronaldo obviously is the example, and he wasn't like that. So I give him a lot of credit for that because he did kind of get benched, and I think he was just like, when I get on the field, I just want to do what I can to help the team win, and it doesn't really matter. And I mean, I think that kind of attitude needs to be. I mean, it shouldn't need to be praised, but with some of these diva players like Ronaldo acting like they do when they get benched in today's world, maybe he does need a little bit praise for that, and to be able to obviously impact a game coming off the bench as well is important.
Yeah, I mean, especially because he started the tournament being the starter, and then he was hooked for Alvarez.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and then he got
yeah,
yeah.
and another thing that's worth kind of praising too is he had the pressure cooker to make that less PK versus the Netherlands to get them past, and he buried it. So. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Uruguayan comparisons aren't fair. I'll say that, even though I
No.
was guilty of doing it. To stick on France, I don't. We talked a little bit about them. We don't have to talk a ton. I do want to talk a little bit about Kolumuani, because this guy had some second half and extra time, and you do worry that maybe that one chance is going to haunt him. But frankly,
Yeah.
it was the mix of him coming on. Basically, because he was playing wing side and he was a lot more aggressive than Dembele was, but I didn't think that was his best position. It was when he was moved almost to like a second striker position that he was so dangerous. And he seems quite comfortable dribbling with the ball. Maybe he needs to work on his final decision making. The couple times maybe the pass was on, he tried to take basically everyone on. But
Yeah.
he really does look quite a player.
Yeah, I think so. He could be one of the starters in the next World Cup that we're talking about. And obviously, at Frankfurt, he's going to play a boat ton of games. So there's no concern of him not developing for lack of matches unless he leaves. But so he's getting plenty of game time as well. And a lot of these young guys are, which is going to be huge in the future because they're going to have to replace some people. We don't know if like Giroud's going to be back, Griezmann, Varane. So there are some people they need to replace, but they still have a good core. And like you mentioned, some of these youth guys are going to come up, and we're going to learn about them, in the years prior to the next World Cup.
I
So
mean,
yeah, it's more of like a reload and not a rebuild for France. So expect good things from them still.
what's scary is all of I recognize all these names, and they're all young. But you mentioned that maybe they won't have Giroud or Benson. I think Benson actually just said he's retiring. Okay, well you can insert Nkuku, maybe in 4 years. Uh,
Wayne Cuckoo, yeah.
but at PSG they have Etikite, who's also young, who could maybe be an option. I mean, Marcus Thuram, I think is like 22, 21. He's leading the line at Martin Gladbach. It's
Yusuf Fafana too could be huge.
stunning.
He's a young guy.
Mhm.
Yeah, they got Saliba too. He didn't play much. So Konate didn't play as much either, and he was pretty good off the bench. So they got a lot of good players. They really do. The one guy I didn't recognize, Ben, was Axel Disasi, and when
True.
he came on,
Yeah.
he didn't look that bad either.
He looked huge, but he almost made a mistake on that Lautaro Martinez. chance because
Yeah.
he's basically running with him, and he basically follows the ball and he doesn't follow Martinez, and Martinez actually makes a really clever run. That was almost a really good goal for Argentina to win the game on, and yeah, it just he kind of messed up the header. But yeah,
Yeah.
another thing to kind of say before we kind of end off is before we praised everything that's happened, but one we do have to mention one of the negatives. It does seem that both Chouameni, Kingsley Coman, and Muani have faced some racial abuse on their Instagram, and unfortunately, it does feel similar to what Saka, Rashford, and Sancho went through.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's still some of that, unfortunately, and I know there's actually
That's
been a lot
what's,
of
yeah, that sucks.
there's been a lot of like negative stuff said by some French politicians where they didn't think the team looked French, which I don't really. I get the connotation of that, but that's just really messed up to say. Um,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that is not accurate at all. Like, come on.
um, and then
Well,
y-
politicians.
and one thing to kind of close off is Deschamps did get the second half right, or got the lineups right, but I do think he got it wrong with the original lineup, and even in the second
Yeah.
half, I don't understand how you didn't start Kanate. I don't think they lose this game if Kanate plays. I'll kind of stick on to that. And it was amazing when Camavinga came on. He really did completely change the game. Messi was not able to do any kind of runs on that side. Camavinga was. I don't think Camavinga lost a duel when Rodrigo de Paul tried to run past him or Alvarez. Just all of a sudden, Argentina's width on that side ended, and then it felt once they took Di Maria off, Argentina didn't have any outlets at all to kind of get
Yeah.
pressure to relieve pressure, and that was
I
really
honestly thought Kamavinga probably should have started over maybe Rabiot.
I would have done I was telling Jeremy this. I would have done a 4-4-2, but the problem is you couldn't do that with Griezmann or Giroud.
Yeah.
You had to sacrifice one of them.
Right.
But
And they were both playing well,
I would have
so they were
started the
like
game in a
before this
4-4-2.
game.
Yeah,
Hmm. Okay, I like that. Yeah. But I guess Deschamps was like, "Hey, it's
he
working,
went with
so
what
there's
worked.
no need
Uh-huh.
to change anything." Yeah, but obviously, yeah, that was a backfire because he did. I mean, he got Giroud and Griezmann. That was completely wrong. And I mean, maybe Dembele, but like you said, he was maybe one of the unlucky ones to get hooked. I thought Giroud too would have been good off the bench. There was like a really good header chance after Giroud left the game, and I think it was Alex or maybe it was you, Ben, that said Giroud would have parried that.
I
So
think
I thought that was kind of funny, but
I think
obviously,
Alex did.
hindsight.
I think
Alex, yeah,
well they just Jeremy thought they were Argentina France was going to blitz them. I kind of agreed with that a little bit.
that
And
too.
what's
Yeah,
weird is they just sat back, and the more France didn't have the ball and they were chasing the game, it just did not make sense to play Giroud. Giroud wasn't offering anything without the ball, and he was not going to make a run. Giroud needs to be in the box essentially to be effective.
yeah, you have to be crossing to his head,
Yeah,
basically. Well, and he didn't really hold up the ball as well, and I thought he would, but he didn't really. I mean, he didn't really get the ball that much either. So it was a great game plan, I think, by Argentina and Scaloni as well.
and so that's pretty much it. I mean, we could go a little longer, but I know you said you had to go. I mean, do you have any
Yeah.
final stuff?
No, I mean, it was just a great game, and I wasn't necessarily expecting it to be this good. We were hoping it was, but some of these finals and World Cups kind of they let us down, and this one was amazing. And I mean, the last World Cup too was a goal fest as well. I think there was like 6 goals scored in that one too. So it's awesome. I think hopefully the viewing numbers are really high for this World Cup, and it'll just continue to grow. And I think it's the perfect time too for North America and Mexico to like host this thing. It's perfect timing because it seems like just the soccer stock, the football stock in the world is rising, and it's a perfect time to host it. I think in 3.5 years, so I'm just really excited. I was kind of like with Jeremy, where it's like international football isn't quite as good as club,
Yeah.
but this tournament especially, and yeah, I mean last year this was pretty good at times too. So yeah, I think it is starting to heat up. It's starting to get more competitive, and hopefully that means more viewers, and hopefully that equals more viewers in the United States as well, because we talked about like MLS, our league could use a little bit of getting better. So I don't know, maybe that'll help. Maybe that'll help MLS too. I don't know, but I think it's just good to see the game, especially in the United States, getting more recognition. Because when we grew up, like it was hard to even watch these games on TV. Sometimes the
It
soccer
was.
games weren't on TV,
Well,
and
the
then
MLS
now you
moving,
can watch a bunch.
the MLS
Hmm
moving to
hmm
Apple Stream
MLS.
probably isn't
Yeah.
going to help that either.
Probably
I
not.
think there'll be games on Fox, but ESPN isn't going to have games, and I don't think they're going to have regional games anymore. Um,
Yeah, and MLS on ESPN used to be a thing too, and they have like some of those big rivalry games and things like that. And
that's
they're
very
not
right.
on ESPN anymore
Yeah.
either. So
I mean, I do want to touch a little bit on what you just said, and Jeremy actually said it earlier on. Is I've kind of turned around on the international game. I used to kind of think like you guys, but the more club football becomes, you have to have a billionaire oil owner or like some like oligarch to even compete. Now,
yeah,
it's still there's still built-in unfair advantages. Like you pretty much have to have high GDPs. In countries basically with a colonist past that
yeah,
end up basically taking advantage here. But it is different. Like basically Jeremy said, Spain have all these like clever, creative midfielders, but they don't have a nine. They can't just go out and buy a Holland.
right.
And it is different. And it does feel like countries that at least put in a little bit into their youth programs. They usually are rewarded for that.
Mhm.
So I mean, it takes some time to do this, but I think
Right.
there's some of that. Another thing to kind of say is it's not that far away from this kind of restarting again. Now we are going to have club football for a little bit, but UEFA Nations League semis aren't that far away. I think these final and semis are in March, and then Euro and Copa are in basically a year and a half's time. And maybe the kind of thing to kind of end on is do you see anyone maybe challenging France for Euros?
Ooh, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be kind of wide open for some of these teams. I mean, maybe like England, Holland. There's a couple of teams too though, like Belgium. I don't know, but I don't know. I think Belgium might be done for a little bit. They kind of need to reload. So I don't know. I think there will be challenges, but it might be kind of I don't know. Maybe like a dark horse. It could be like a Switzerland or Denmark, maybe I don't know, something like that. That could some weird team I feel like could stop France and just get the tactics right for a day. Maybe like there's a Morocco kind of in those Euros, but I would imagine they'd probably be the favorite to win it, right? France for the Euros.
Easily, yeah. England's probably going to
It would
be up
be
there, but
England,
it looks like they're going to keep
maybe
Southgate.
Germany, or
Maybe that works. Maybe it doesn't.
yeah,
Portugal
yeah. I don't know.
aren't going to have Santos, so
Oh, Portugal,
who they
yeah,
decide to get is going to be interesting. I think it'd be funny and just kind of a a neutral, comical, or maybe sinister way if Argentina got every kind of Christmas gift in the world this tournament where 2 years time, maybe it's Ronaldo holding the trophy. If he's still with Portugal, because Portugal are still a strong outfit. They were only
yeah,
knocked out by Morocco. Who knows what happens in the semis if they were to get into that? They've got talent really everywhere. Jota wasn't able to play this go around. They'll have him. Rafael Leao
yeah.
is a player that's
Layout,
only going to get better and stronger. The midfield it just seems absolutely stacked as well. They don't they maybe have some issues defensively, so they need to find maybe a better center back pairing than Ruben Diaz and Danilo or Pepe. I don't think you can do Pepe for the next
no,
Euros,
yeah, you
but
won't be able to do Pep.
that would be maybe a team I would probably look out for.
Okay, I like that pick. Yeah,
Yeah, and so
interesting. New coach too. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
that's it. I did want to do like a little bit like what we got right and wrong. I guess we don't really have time. I'll just kind of pump myself up saying I got right not believing in Belgium. Basically, I didn't back Martinez. I was actually
Mhm.
thinking that Southgate, Tite, and Santos would hold their teams back. So I think I was right about that. And
Yep.
I texted Jeremy if midfields don't matter, and apparently they do. One thing I got absolutely wrong was believing in Canada, Denmark, and Uruguay. I had Uruguay in the final. Um, uh,
Not a bad pick though. I
my
mean,
second one was
Darwin.
believing in flickball without strikers.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Havertz stuff did not work. And then I thought a cam would still work, like a bit of a number 10, and I've completely turned around on that too. Because it doesn't work in the international game, and it just doesn't work in club either. Versus three man midfields, your 10 has to work without the ball and has to be a number defensively, and it just yeah. So no more. The more Griezmann kind of roles, I think are going to go die out as we go forward.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, possibly. We'll see.
And well, I guess that's it. So I've kind of said my piece. It was like you said, it was an awesome game. I texted Andrew. It might have been the best, just pure soccer game I think I've ever seen, let alone final. I was trying to tell Jeremy about that because the extra time is what kind of put it over the top. Usually those extra times are dead, and the first extra time
Yeah.
was dead, but the second half or that second 15 minutes was just end to end, and it was like Jeremy said, it was almost peak football, peak soccer.
Oh yeah, so good. Yeah, I was glad it went to overtime. I was like, oh, more.
And it's kind of unfair that Qatar gets basically the best World Cup in maybe everyone's lifetime, or at least our lifetime. But it is what it is. It worked out for them, and I guess we'll kind of end with that. So we'll be
Yeah,
back.
hopefully, we'll be taking over that mantle in 3.5 years. Best
Yeah,
World Cup in the United States.
well, I mean, to be honest,
Hopefully.
a host country usually, or host region usually benefits by it being hosted somewhere. You usually kind of see, like South Korea, I think got into semifinals
Yeah.
in 2002.
hmm
So
Yep. Yep.
and you look at what France has been able to build. It feel as long as we don't get in the way, we should be able to do something similar. But it's going to have to start getting rid of Boherto after all that geo mess, and it's going to have to
Yeah.
start with the MLS kind of
Definitely.
getting out of it too.
Or just not picking MLS players for the team.
There you go. All right, and that's a good way to end. We'll be back after to talk about Boxing Day because the club football returns.
Oh yeah.
Liverpool have to
Got
turn
some
around and
big matches.
face Emmy Martinez, the monster that he is, which I'm not looking forward to. Maybe MA can kind of have a binge and not be available for that game.
Yeah, they might give him a rest. They might give him like an extra week or two off. Maybe, who knows?
That would be a nice Christmas present for me. And so that's it. We look forward to club football. Arsenal. Everyone's chasing Arsenal with the 5 point lead, and so
Yeah.
that'll get you going again.
Well, yeah, but now no Jesus, so I don't know. I'm selling. I'm selling my Arsenal stock at the moment.
And so, and the January transfer window is right around the corner, so we'll be talking about that. Like I said, no
But yeah, that
no
always
no
gets us
break,
going.
no break for us. So thank you guys for tuning in and listening, and thank you Rex. I know we went a little long, but we didn't do the 2 hour stuff.
Oh,
And
I
so
was enjoying it.
for us two at the reserve squad, you stay squatty.
Stay squatty, guys. Happy holidays.